so the first part of the test will be this. Pictures will be much better than my pictures, but so I couldn't draw a good picture exact, but hopefully it'll make sense still. So there's two problems like this. So it says, how many cycles does each sine function have on the interval from 0 to 2 pi, and find the amplitude in the period. So then it's laid out like this. So number of cycles from 0 to 2 pi, you can count. So I'm starting at 0, right? So it must be a sine function. So there's 1, and then there's 2, and a half, right? 2 and a half. So 2.5. Okay, amplitude. This one's kind of tricky. They're actually a little bit more straightforward than this one. It's from -1 to 3. So what's the amplitude? 2. Good, because it's a total distance of 4, right? -1 to 3, so it didn't bounce evenly, but it's an amplitude of 4. Is everybody okay with that? Okay. No, 2. Amplitude of 2. I didn't mean to say 4 just now. We're good? Okay. 4 distance total, so amplitude of 2. Then you have to know period. The equation for period is period is equal to 2 pi divided by b. So that would be 2 pi divided by b, which is number of cycles. So 2 pi divided by 2.5, right? So then we would just take our calculator. 2 divided by 2.5, which is 4 over 5. So 4 pi fifths. Okay. Because otherwise with this one, without using the formula, period is physical length of one cycle, which was from here to here, right? Which we wouldn't have been able to tell exactly where that landed. So we would have used the formula. But there will be others that are a little bit more straightforward, such as the next one. So looking at this, the number of cycles between 0 to 2 pi. Now you can see the full length clear to 2 pi, right? So can't we just count? Or let's say that we've cut off the picture at pi. Could you count how many up to pi and then double it? Okay, so let's see. Looking at this one, once again, it's a sine function. So here's 1, 2, 3, and then 4 cycles up to 2 pi. So 4 cycles. Now there was only 2. Like I said, on the test, you might only see up to, like, let's say you didn't show you up to 2 pi, and let's say that I erased that. Then you would count up to pi and double it, right? Everybody start just saying that again. Okay, so the number of cycles between 0 to 2 pi was 4. And then our amplitude in this one's 3, right? And then our period is, I just like to use the formula, it's 2 pi divided by b. So that would be 2 pi divided by 4, which is pi halves. And you can see that that makes sense, because remember that period means length of one cycle. From here to here was one cycle. So see how it ends at pi halves. But it never hurts to use the formula and check it. Okay. Questions on that? So then it would be easy to write an equation from here, wouldn't it? Because we would have y is equal to amplitude 2 sine of b is number of cycles, so 2.5 theta, right? And then up here we could write an equation easy, y is equal to 3. Oh, but wasn't it, oh, this one went up first. This one went down first, so isn't it negative? So negative 3 sine, and it was a sine function, and then the number of cycles between 0 to 2 pi was 4. So 4 theta. Remember that your period is not in the equation. Okay, moving on. So the next one on the test will say, be like just something like this, find the amplitude and the period and sketch one cycle of the graph. So let's find the amplitude, it's 2. The number of cycles between 0 to 2 pi, that's our b value. So we have 3 cycles, and it never hurts to write from 0 to 2 pi, so we don't forget what it means, because a lot of people will draw in 3 cycles and they don't forget that that's up to 2 pi, right? So then now we can draw in one cycle. So I draw y, x. Okay, so we're doing an amplitude of 2, so we're going up 2, down 2. I'm going to kind of draw in the dotted line so I don't go above it. And then we're drawing in 3. Well, it says draw in one cycle. So what I'm going to do personally is draw in 3. so I can make sure I label it all correctly. And then I'm going to just draw it right at 1 cycle. So I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to draw in 3 cycles. So starting at 0, sine, I bounce all the way up. Down, there's 1, 2, and 3. So that will be ending at 2 pi, right? So isn't 2 pi cut into 3 sections? Oh, wait, did I draw more than that? 1, 2, 3. No, I drew in it, right? So then we can find the period, right? The length of 1 cycle using the formula. Period is equal to 2 pi divided by b. So our period is 2 pi divided by 3. So it's 2 pi thirds, right? Our period is 2 pi thirds. So this would be from here to here would be at 2 pi thirds, right? So that's 2 pi thirds. Then what plus another 2 pi thirds, wouldn't that be 4 pi thirds? So 4 pi thirds. And then this will be 6 pi thirds, which makes sense because that is 2 pi, right, everybody? So now it did say just draw in 1 cycle. So that would have just been from here to here, right? You get what I'm saying? So I mean, if you if you label it correctly and draw in 3, I don't care. As long as it's all labeled correctly. Okay, any questions on that? Okay. That's about as detailed as you would need to get. However, you could keep getting more details, but I'm not that worried about it. Okay. So with this one, find the amplitude, find the period, sketch 1 cycle of the graph. So we're doing this again. Amplitude, there'll be 2 problems. Amplitude is -4. The number of cycles from 0 to 2 pi is 6. So with this one, it says draw in 1 cycle. I'll just draw in 1. So we know that our period is length of 1 cycle. So 2 pi divided by b, which is 6 pi thirds. So now we know we're going up 4, down, -4. Okay. So now careful, because of that negative, we've got to dip down first. It's a sine function. So we're going to dip down first. So starting at 0, it goes all the way down, all the way back up, and boom. Now we know that the length of 1 cycle is pi thirds, right? So if we cut pi thirds in half, what would we be at? That's like multiplying by 1/2, guys, so it's pretty easy. What is it? Pi 6? Do you understand how to do that, guys? Okay. Pi 6, and then that would be 0. So that's pretty detailed, you know what I mean? Make sure you put in as much detail as you feel like you can do without getting it wrong, but to get enough points. Does that make sense? So just kind of use your own judgment with that. So I could have even cut pi 6 in half again, but that's being pretty detailed, which wouldn't hurt. So cutting it in half again would be from here to here, right? So that would be pi 12ths. So that's 1 pi 12ths, 2 pi 12ths, which is pi 6, 3 pi 12ths, which is 3 pi 12ths, which would be pi 4ths, right? So if you're going to draw in 1 cycle only, it better be this detailed. But if you're going to draw in, if you drew in 6 cycles, then we split each cycle, that would have been detailed enough. Does that make sense?
Which one is the pi 4?
How do I get pi 4s?
Yeah.
This is 1 pi 12ths, 2 pi 12ths,
Oh,
right? Which is pi 6. This is 3 pi 12ths, which is 1/4. And then this would be 4 pi 12ths, which is 1/3. Does that make sense? So you can check your work. Okay, so it just depends. Like if you're going to draw it in with all the cycles, and then you would label each period, that's detailed enough. If you're going to draw in just 1 cycle, it needs to be split apart pretty good. Okay. So you have no questions on those? Okay. So the next part on the graph is, it says write a cosine function for each description, assume that a is greater than 0. So you have to say to yourself, okay, I know that cosine has the form y is equal to a times cosine of b theta, and then in with theta minus h, that's your shift left and right, plus k. So we'll look at this here. So amplitude's 2/3, period's 4, okay? Was period anywhere in here? No, right? Okay, so we've got to say, okay, so there's no shift up and down, no shift left and right. So we know for sure it's like this. Y is equal to 2/3 cosine of b theta. Well, there's no shift left and right, no shift up and down, right? So that's as far as I'm going to get for a second. And we know b is the number of cycles from 0 to 2 pi. So you're like, well, I'm only given the period. So you're going to go up the side and say, but I do know that period is equal to 2 pi divided by b. This is the one that like most people miss for some reason. So we're given the period this time. So we're going to find b. Then we can find b to put it in our equation. So we have 4 is equal to 2 pi divided by b. And then we'll solve for b. So I multiply both sides by b. So we have 4b is equal to 2 pi divided by 4 to get b alone. So we have pi halves. So our b is pi halves. So we have y is equal to 2/3 cosine of b is pi halves theta. So don't let that make you feel weird. Remember, we have seen stuff like this where there's pi halves cycles, remember, but then we calculated the actual distance, right? If we were going to graph it. Does that make sense, everybody? Because a lot of times it's just a whole number, right? But sometimes it comes out in radians, and then we're like, okay, well, we know radians are just numbers and whatnot. Okay. Questions on that? You're able to solve for b given the period. Okay. So another problem, let's practice one more time. It says write the cosine function for each description. So once again, it says assume that a is greater than 0. That means the amplitude is greater than 0. If you don't have an amplitude greater than 0, you don't have a function. So with this one, it says amplitude 5, period is pi over 3. So there's no shift, right? So we know that this has the form a times cosine of b theta with no shifting. That's the form of a cosine function. So our amplitude's 5, so we have y is equal to 5 times cosine of b theta. You're like, well, b is the number of cycles between 0 to 2 pi, but we're given the period. Don't put in the period as b. That would be wrong. So you go to the side and say, I do know that period is equal to 2 pi divided by b. We're trying to solve for b. Let's put in what we know. So we have pi thirds is equal to 2 pi divided by b. Then we'll solve for b. Multiply both sides by b. Divides out. So then we would divide by pi thirds. So then b is alone. So you've got to be really careful, because what we're really doing is b is equal to 2 pi divided by pi thirds. So isn't that, it's dividing fractions, right? So isn't 2 pi the same thing as 2 pi over 1? Divided by pi thirds. Now, the reason I write it like that is so that you have a fraction divided by a fraction, and then you know that dividing fractions is easy as pi. Flip the second fraction and multiply. So I put the 3 on top, the pi on bottom, and multiply from there. So our pi's divide out, and then 6 divided by 1. Is everybody good with that? So our b value is 6. So now we can put that in. So our final answer would be y is equal to 5 cosine of 6 theta. So we know there are 6 cycles between 0 to 2 pi. Is everybody good with that? Just do not forget that period is not in the equation ever. If you're given the period and not the number of cycles, you have to use that to find the number of cycles using that formula. Period is equal to 2 pi divided by b, and so on. Okay. All right, so it says write an equation for the translation. So we're given this equation, y is equal to cosine of x. We're taking it 3 units to the right. So you have to say to yourself, I know that any shift left and right is a phase shift that's added with x, right? In parentheses. And we always go opposite. So we have y is equal to cosine of x. Since it's units to the right, that will be x minus 3. That has to be in parentheses, written just like that. Questions? Okay, next one, it says y is equal to sine of x. We're shifting it 3 pi halves units to the left and 3 units down. So you say, okay, so left and right is my shift with x in parentheses. Anything up and down is added on the outside. The sign stays the same. So we have y is equal to sine of x. Since it's 3 pi units to the left, it'll be plus 3 pi halves. That would be shifting us 3 pi halves units to the left, and then 3 units down. So that would be minus 3, right? Sign stays the same. So if I said 3 units up, when we can put plus 3? Okay. So you'll see 2 problems like that. Okay, next thing you'll see on the test is it says write a new equation of the function f of x is equal to negative 3 sine of pi thirds x if you double the amplitude and decrease the midline by 5. So let's work our way through this. We're doubling the amplitude. So that's negative 3 plus negative 3. That's double, right? Or times 2. So that would be negative 6, right? So that's double the amplitude. So we know we're going to have a negative 6 right there. And then it says decrease the midline by 5. So if you think about it, isn't that just taking it and shifting it down 5 units? Okay, so looking at this, there was no shift in the beginning. We started at 0, right? Everybody, no shift down. So we're just going down 5 units. So wouldn't we just put a minus 5 on there? So that would be our answer. Y is equal to negative 6 sine of, keep this the same, that didn't change, pi thirds x minus 5. Now what if I change the problem and said, and you're shifting it, it has a phase shift of 2. Does that change this at all? No, right? Isn't that just our b value? That's the number of cycles between 0 and 2 pi. So if I said we're taking a phase shift of 2 units, wouldn't we just put minus 2 after that x? Right? Everybody? Does that make sense? Okay. Another one. Okay, so here we go. Same idea, we just got to think. So it says, write the new equation of the function, r of theta is equal to 8 times cosine of 6 theta if you cut the amplitude by 2, and it has 1/3 of the period. So this one we've got to think about a little bit more in depth here. The amplitude part's easy, right? Cutting the amplitude by 2, I'd be dividing it by 2. So our new amplitude will be 4, right? Cutting it by 2, cutting it in half. Okay, so now it says it has 1/3 of the period. So then you have to think to yourself, does that stand for period? No, that stands for number of cycles. So we know that period's equal to 2 pi divided by b, right? So let's figure out what our period was originally. Does that make sense, everybody? So we have our period originally is 2 pi divided by 6, right? Is everybody comfortable so far? So that's our period originally. So that's pi thirds. So our original period is pi thirds. Is everybody comfortable with that? Now we're taking that period and we're cutting it. It has 1/3 of the period. We're dividing by 3, right? Or multiplying by 1/3. So multiply it by 1/3. What do you get? Pi over, multiply. Yeah, pi over 9. So this would be our new period of taking that and cutting it into 1/3 of that. Does that make sense? Okay, that's our new period, but that doesn't go in here. So you say to yourself, okay, so the new number of cycles in my new function will be periods equal to 2 pi divided by b. We know that and we are given the period, right? We just found the new period. Are you guys lost? Okay, so we found the new period by cutting our original period into 1/3, and then we plug it in here to find out the number of cycles. So we'll have pi over 9 is equal to 2 pi over b. Then once again, we will solve for b, multiply by b. So then we would divide by pi over 9. So then we would flip, so we have b is equal to, and we have 2 pi divided by pi 9ths. Flip this second and multiply. The pi's will divide out. Can I just skip that step of writing it out? So the pi's will divide out. 2 times 9 is 18, right? Okay, so our final rewriting this will be r of theta is equal to 4 cosine of 18 theta. Because that new number of cycles, that new b value is 18. So that one took a little bit more thinking. Questions on how to do that? Okay, next.
Why do you change B?
Because it says it has a third of the period,
Oh.
right? So we had to say, well, that's not period, that's the number of cycles. So we said, okay, but we know how to find the original period, 2 pi divided by that, right?
Yeah.
So then we have our original period was pi thirds. So then we took and cut our period by a third. That's why we multiplied it by a third. This is just all original. So then we have, this was our period of our new function. So now that we have the period of our new function, we can plug in and find b, right? Now that we have the period of our new function, we can find b of our new function. Does that make sense? Okay. Which, let's think about it. This kind of actually makes a little bit more sense if you think about it. Because look, if there were 6 cycles from 0 to 2 pi, and we cut those periods into a third, won't we be making them smaller? You get what I'm saying? So then if you multiply that, so it'll be 3 times the amount, right? And 3 times the number of cycles if you're cutting that into a third. So 3 times the number of cycles came out to be 18. Does that make sense? But you could go through the math like we just did. I can't tell if that actually made sense because you're just kind of like all like,
Yeah,
you're all good.
Yeah.
Okay, so next thing it says find the measure of the angle between 0 to 2 pi. That's what I meant to put on there. Between 0 to 2 pi. Coterminal with each angle. So we're finding a coterminal angle, but remember, yes, on the review we were able to find any coterminal angle. Today I'm being specific. I want the one between 0 to 2 pi. So doesn't that mean in the 360 range, a positive angle, right? So if we have -3, -230, we add 360. That will probably put us in the right spot. So well, I know it will. -230 plus 360 is 130 degrees. Is that between 0 to 2 pi? Yeah, so there's the coterminal angle. And then right here, 400. So we're going to subtract 360 because we need it to be between 0 to 2 pi. So 400 subtract 360, 40 degrees. Then you check, is that the coterminal angle between 0 to 2 pi? Yes. Make sense? Pretty easy. Don't miss those ones, but they're not going to be worth a whole lot because they're pretty easy. Okay, it says write each measure in radians, express the answer in terms of negative. Oh my gosh. When I did this yesterday, it was after school pretty late. Okay, express the terms of pi and also the decimal rounded to the nearest tenth. Okay, so we're changing this from degrees to radians. We're changing this from degrees to radians. So it says write the answer in terms of pi. So that means we're writing it in pi radians, and then it says also the decimal answer. So we know from degrees to radians, we're going to multiply by pi over 180, right? So we're going to multiply by pi over 180. You can't type pi into your calculator. So you're just going to take your calculator. We know when we multiply fractions, we multiply straight across. So we really have -210 pi over 180. Then we'll simplify the fractions. You'll go -210 divided by 180, change it back to a fraction. You get -7/6. So -7 pi 6. That is this in radians. They're equal. That's just in radians. And then it says give us the decimal answer, so you'll just type it in because we know that's just a physical length. -7 hit pi divided by 6. So that's also equal to -3.665. So the nearest tenth would have been -3.7. Pretty easy, right? So don't miss that one. Okay, write each measure in degrees. So now we're taking it from radians to degrees. So you'll say I'm going from radians to degrees. I said degrees second, that's what I put on top. So I'm multiplying by 180 over pi, right? Now keep in mind, the reason we can do that, isn't that just a fancy one? Isn't pi the same thing as 180 degrees? Okay. So then our pi's divide out, and then we multiply straight across. So on top we have 3 times 180 divided by 7. 3 times 180, enter, divided by 7 is. And it does say on the test if you need to round to the nearest whole degree. So that's 77, and it's 0.14, so that's 77 degrees. Does that make sense? Okay, it says the measure of theta of an angle in standard position is given. Find the exact values of cosine and sine. So Once again, the measure of theta of an angle in standard position is given. Find the exact values of cosine theta, sine of theta. So, what's cosine of theta? What's cosine of negative 315 degrees? This is where you would use your unit circle. So, so 315, negative 315. So positive 315 is right here, right? If you look at your unit circle, positive 315 is clear around here. So negative would be clear to, it would be 45 degrees, right? Coterminal, coterminal means same thing, right? So it's coterminal. Does everybody see how to do that?
Yes.
Okay. So then cosine, you'd write it like this. So cosine of negative 315 degrees is equal to, cosine is x, it's the square root of 2 over 2. And we're done. Sine of negative 315 degrees is y. I don't know, I wrote something weird there, but it's okay. Is y, so that's the square root of 2 over 2. So then 240 degrees, it's positive, so we're looking right there at 4 pi thirds or 240 degrees, same thing. So the cosine of 240 degrees is equal to x at 240, which is negative a half. And then sine of 240 degrees is equal to negative square root of 3 over 2. Okay, find the exact values for 7 pi 6. Find 7 pi 6 on your thing here. So we know that cosine of 7 pi 6 is equal to, is equal to 7 pi 6, right there. Negative square root of 3 over 2. And sine of 7 pi 6 is equal to negative a half. So you're just using your unit circle for those. Pretty easy. Okay. Okay, it says the terminal side of an angle has this point. What is the sine and the cosine of the angle? What is the angle? First of all, isn't it really easy to answer what's the sine and cosine of that angle? Isn't that sine, cosine right there? Okay, so cosine of that angle is x, so cosine would be, so cosine of theta, right, is equal to negative square root of 2 over 2, right? Isn't that x? And then sine of theta is y, so square root of 2 over 2. Now it says, now what is that angle? We'll locate that on your unit circle. If you can be looking with my eyeballs, finding that. Oh, there it is, 135 degrees. So you could say 135 degrees, which is also equal to 3 pi 4ths. Right? That's where that angle is. Does everybody understand how to do that one? Easiest one of the most missed for some reason. Okay. Find the area of triangle GHF. If the measure of angle F is 35 degrees, if G is 10, if H is 7. So I draw a quick picture. GHF. So the measure of angle F is 35 degrees. Side G is 10. Side H is 7. Find the area. So you know area is equal to 1/2 times side 1 times side 2 times side sine of the angle in between those two sides. So area is equal to 1/2 times 10 times 7 times sine of the angle in between, which happened to be 35 degrees. Okay, you're making sure your calculator's in degree mode because we are calculating something that's in degrees. So anyways, you'll just type it in. 0.5 times 10 times 7 times sine of 35, and you get 20.07. 20.07. The area is 20.07. Now guess what? You've got it. Okay, these were inches, right? Inches. I have seen this on an ACT, and I've seen it on an end of level, where people don't put the units of measurement right, and they get it wrong. So these were inches, right? How many inches were multiplied 2, right? So that's inches squared. Does that make sense, everybody? So try to label it correctly. Questions? Okay, triangle ABC with the measure of angle C is 30, and A is 10 and C is 12. Find the measure of angle B. So we're going to draw a picture, and you can decide, am I going to use law of sines or cosines? You got to use the correct one. So you got to be able to use what you're going to use. So ABC. So the measure of angle C is 30 degrees. And then side A is 10. Side C is 12. So we look at it and we say we have an angle on two sides, right? Where the side across from the given acute angle is larger than the other given side. We are using the law of sines, right? So we know if we're finding the measure of angle B, we need that side across, right? Well, can't we find the measure of angle A first? Okay, let's do that. So let's focus on finding the measure of angle A, because then once we know A, don't we know B? So we have to use angle A first to go ahead and do this. So that's what we're going to focus on first. So we have this angle and this side. So we have sine of 30 degrees over the side across from it, which is 12. We know that will be equal to sine of A, sine of angle A, divided by the sine across from it, side across from it, 10. Now from there, we're going to solve for angle A algebraically. So to get A alone, I'm going to multiply both sides by 10. Then look, 10 over 10 divides that. Don't get your algebra wrong because you get lazy. Okay, is everybody good with that? So then from there, I have 10 sine of 30 over 12 is equal to sine of angle A. Now in this problem, isn't A entrapped in sine? Yes. So we've got to get sine to go away. The only way to do that is to take the sine inverse. And you do it to both sides of the equation. So sine inverse and sine cancel out. Now finally A is alone. So you'll type it in. Sine inverse. The second sine inverse of 10 sine of 30. Now because of how I've written it, you'll just type it in exactly as you see it. Divided by 12. Close your parentheses. So we have A is equal to 24.6 degrees. We're going to round to the nearest 10. So we have 24.6 degrees. So this is 24.6, right? So now finding angle B is really easy. 180 minus that, right? So 180 minus 24.6 minus 30. So angle B is 125.4 degrees. Questions? Okay, so it says in triangle ABC with A4, B3, and C5, find the measure of angle B. So I'm going to draw a picture real quick again. So ABC, side A is 4, side B is 3, side C is 5. So you ask yourself, what kind of equation am I using here? Well, we have three sides, no angles. That's the law of cosines, right? So we know that you said the law of cosines, but it says we're finding the measure of angle B. That's important. So this is the angle we're finding. So in our formula, this has to be the side on the outside, right? So we'll have 3 squared is equal to other side squared, 4 squared plus the other side squared, 5 squared minus 2 times that times cosine of that angle in between. So I'm going to call it cosine of B because it is angle B we're trying to find here. Once again, side B and angle B, what we're trying to find, sit on the outskirts of town. Okay, so then from there it's just algebra solving for B. Careful though. So let's go ahead and just be really careful with our algebra. Let's add those up. So that's going to be obviously 16 plus 25. So we have 9 is equal to 41. Now careful, this is where most people make errors. So then we have negative 2 times 4 times 5. So minus 40 cosine of B. Is everybody comfortable with how I'm simplifying this? So now we're going to get 41, subtract 41. So we have 9 minus 41. So we have negative 32 is equal to negative 40 cosine of B. Now to get B alone, we'll divide both sides because negative 40 is multiplied to cosine of B. Divide both sides by negative 40. So then that divides out and becomes 1. Then we would take, so we have, I wish I had a little bit more, I just hate not having room. So we really have 32 over 40 is equal to a negative divided by a negative is a positive. But even if you type in both negatives, you'll be okay. So we have cosine of b. Now to get b alone, because it's entrapped in cosine, so we're going to take the cosine inverse. Okay, cosine inverse, cosine inverse. And now b, cosine inverse, and cosine cancel out, b's alone. So you'll take the cosine inverse of 32 divided by 40. And if you typed in negative 32 divided by negative 40, you would have been okay. So that's 36.9 degrees. So b, angle B is equal to 36.9 degrees. So we were able to solve for angle B using the law of cosines. Okay, questions? Okay, so my last question for you. How does the shifting of a function up and down or left and right affect the amplitude of a function? So let's think about that. If you take a function, shift it left and right, does that affect the amplitude? Nope, so left and right, no effect, right? So left and right, no amplitude change, right? It's inwards. We'll be pretty specific. Okay, so then shifting up and down, the amplitude still will stay the same, right? But won't it? It'll fall in between different intervals, right? But the amplitude doesn't change. So maybe say that. Say amplitude won't change. However, they will fall between new y points, right? However you want to say it. New y points. Okay. Because if it was between -3 and 3 and you shifted up 1, it'll be between -2 and 4, right? Does that make sense? So just be really specific if you want to get full points if I ever ask something in words. Okay. That's the last thing. If you feel comfortable with everything we went over, you should do awesome on the test. Just do not forget. If you're given the period, do not put it in your equation. You've got to find the number of cycles. That's one of the biggest things. So those of you that came in late, you might want to see the first view if you want to stay for a second. You guys actually missed part there.